All right. So then the next question: once you've decided which story you actually want to write, what do? So we've got a couple of guidelines here, so we can look at characterization or world building. How do you sort of approach that? Karen, you want to start this one?
Okay. I sort of just plop into it. Often I'll come up with either a scene idea or a character idea or sometimes a plot idea. So I don't always start with character and I don't always start with plot. It depends on what pops into my head. And I start writing it, and after a little while I'll go, okay, I really need to start writing out a character sheet for this character. And sometimes I forget to write them down, which when you go to series, it makes it really hard to go back and look. So write them down, keep a Bible. But I love world building, so I go for the basic rules. I often have magic, and so I have a basic, this will work and that won't work. And I write with the place that I'm doing at the moment, and then as the story gets bigger, I sort of do the snowflake method, and sort of it grows. But then again, that's what I did when I did D&D world building. So, yeah.
I'm also a bit of a pantser, but my series are all written a bit differently. But I actually find that's interesting anyway. It's like it keeps me enthused when I'm not only writing in different universes but in different styles. Apocalypse was a lot of research up front about what conditions will be like, what prepping's all about. And then I just kind of let the world and the changes of that dictate where the story went. And I discovered with the character, which is quite interesting. A couple other series I do a 3-act structure, and I'll just literally get a big A3 bit of paper, put those acts down, and then write those ideas that I've had and plot them out on there. And a story arc starts to form around that basic skeleton, if you like. And then my kids series, I do a full treatment. So I know where the overall story's going, but I'll go scene by scene. Okay, this is the scene. These are the things that happen. Dot points around everything, and then for a 10,000 word book, let's say, it might be 1,500 words. But like when I go to write it, then I'll go literally. Sometimes I think of a good line of dialogue. Sometimes it's like just the overarching what the scene strategy, and then I go back and it's paint by numbers after that. But I feel like it's a good safety net for me to start writing because I've thought about the entirety of the story. And yeah,
I'm envious.
Steph? So this is really interesting because I think the whole point of this is how different writers do different things, and this is fascinating for me. I don't do world building when I start writing the story. My world building happens as I'm writing the story. Because I write romance and I write in first person predominantly, if I don't have those two main characters, I can't write anything. So I need to have an idea of who they are, even if it's a vague idea, before I can start writing. Because the first thing I'm going to do is jump into that person's head. So I'll start, I'm not a huge fan of starting, midway through the story and then coming back. I've done it a few times. It's not my go-to. But, yeah, it's about jumping into that person's head. So I need those two characters. So I've got that scene that I came up with while listening to a song. I've got kind of the vibe of the book. Then I have to deep dive into that scene. Who are the characters in that scene? What's happening between them? And then how did they get there? So yeah, I have the characters long before I've done any world building. I find that fascinating.
So do you map out a sheet? Do you have pictures for inspiration of who your characters are and stuff like that, and then work out, this is what they do here, this is what they do there, this is how they would react if someone walked up and said, dude, you've got blood on you or something?
I
put them in different scenarios, or
I do put them in different scenarios. I should be a lot better at writing things down than I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, I rely way too much on remembering things and then having to go back and rereading a draft that I wrote 6 months ago. Who is that person? Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, it is about putting them in different situations. How would they react? But that is what I feel creates the story.
Yeah.
You could have the same scenario and you chuck 20 different characters into that, you've got 20 different stories. So for me, what makes the story is those two characters, how they act to what's happening and how they act against each other almost forms the story in itself. Because that conflict that we were talking about might happen naturally if those two characters have opposing views.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I start with the characters.
Do you have anything to add, Rob?
Really only that I like to develop, and as I develop the story, I find those connections that come in and emphasize all the characterization and emphasize the world building. You come across a little detail as you start to extrapolate, and then you can always go back and build that in so it looks like it was there from the start, but it just punches up all the little details in your story and really brings the reader in. So you don't have to have it all at the start. You can always just add that little bit of flavour as you go.
I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think the takeaway from this is, because we're all seeming to be doing it completely differently.
Yeah.
So I think the takeaway from this question is, you don't have to have everything up front. Some of us start with the story, the characters, you know, the general vibe, the world building, the magic. You just need one element. And your fairy floss thing, that is perfect. It's just about building on that. You might not know how it ends when you start, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, and that's definitely what I do when I'm writing. I generally have no idea what's going to happen or how it's going to get there, and I generally just start with, I want to write a book about this, and take it from there. So I'm like, I want to write a story about a little old lady, and boom, it's this. Yep. It's, you know, so it's curious how like we all do things so differently.